Just 2 days remaining until Election Day now, and in a recent Fox News poll, Hillary Clinton is leading by 74 points over Donald Trump when it comes to black voters, while Trump is leading just 19 points with white voters. Joining us right now is former NFL player, UN ambassador, and the CEO of the Brewer Group, Jack Brewer. Ambassador Brewer, great to see you.
Good to see you as well.
All right, so your reaction to these polls, you don't think the average black man or woman is coming out?
Well, particularly, this is the poor black American is not coming out to vote. The young American is not coming out to vote. If you think about it, if you're poor and black in this country right now, the American dream just doesn't exist. And, you know, there's a real issue with that. Blacks propelled Barack Obama to victory, really supported him. I think that was a big difference in 2008, even leading into 2012. But, you know, right now, if you're an African American and you look at our numbers, you look at, you know, education crisis going on in our country, you look at jobs in the African-American community. I mean, I've seen polls that have been staggering, very upsetting. I mean, if you're between the ages of 16 and 24 and you're African-American in this country, the unemployment rate's almost 20%. That's just too high, and almost 60% of all young African Americans aren't even working. And you're talking about a community that, you know, needs economical resources. We need job creation, and that's just not happening.
So they don't believe either candidate. They don't believe Trump either, then.
No, they're staying at home.
They're just going to stay home.
Staying at home. You know, a lot of African Americans are obviously not going to support Donald Trump because the perspective in the media is that he's been labeled as a racist. And at the same time, Hillary Clinton, I don't think people get excited about her, particularly in the African-American community. I live down in South Florida, you know, the Haitian-American community in some of those areas. You know, people are also skeptical about Hillary Clinton, including myself. I mean, I'm not very excited about either candidate, but, you know, we need to vote, and I think there's a real issue when you see a population in America that has so many issues. You know, we need to really, you know, have a leader that's going to focus on the African-American population, particularly those that are lower income.
Jack, what do you think of the inner cities in the United States? What's your opinion of how the inner cities seem to be working?
The inner cities need help. It really upset me to see that there was so much negative pushback when Donald Trump started talking about the inner cities, because we need to talk about these issues to address them. We can't pretend like they don't exist. If you go to schools in the inner cities, I mean, we're spending record amounts of money in our public school system right now. I think we spend almost 39–40% more than most countries do in our public schools, but we're not performing. And these kids just aren't getting educated. And it's starting early. You know, by the age of 3–4 years old, you already have huge drop-offs in reading abilities and math and all your various STEM areas of education, and that's a huge issue. We need to put our resources and our time and our efforts into education and stop worrying about being so politically correct, because right now, you know, there's a lot of things that need improvement.
Yeah. In one of your articles, you said that you believe that a prosperous African-American middle class can be summed up by the word capitalism. You also have a few points to go along with that belief. Talk about this, because this is a message that's not being communicated. It's
not. You know, capitalism calls for accountability. And I think we need accountability in our entitlement programs. But more importantly, when you have a capitalism, if you have capitalism as really the backbone of your views and perspectives, you work hard and you compete. And we've lost the thought of competition in our community, particularly in our African-American community. So we're not working. Like I told you before, 60% of 16 to 24-year-olds in the black community don't work at all. I have a huge issue with that. I think that needs to be addressed. I think kids need to be trained. I think kids need to be taught to compete. And if you look right now, I mean, I have an 18-year-old and I have a 17-year-old. And they refuse to go get a job, you know, that makes minimum wage.
But to your point, that's really not the role of government, though, is it?
I agree.
It's the role of family and community and, quite frankly, church.
Yes.
Which is something that is... It's not it's missing in every part of the country in a significant way. That's not an urban issue. That's not a black issue. It's an everybody issue.
The African-American community hoped that Barack Obama was going to address some of those issues. And I think having an African-American president there was more expected from him in regards to addressing some of those community issues, some of those issues that really are needed to go out there and encourage parents to do a better job, because that's really where it starts. But a lot of these parents aren't educated either, and so we need to put our resources in to education programs in the African American community, into job training programs that are going to start people from the bottom up, and not worry about increasing entitlements and increasing welfare. Those programs are great, but those programs need reform.
Jack, if there was something you could say to the next president that would help the African American community, the inner cities, in terms of policy, what would it be?
We need more competition in our school systems. We need competition in regards to teachers. We need to reward accountability. That's right.
By the way, Donald Trump is saying that.
Of course he is, but Donald Trump can't say it to African Americans because they've put earplugs on.
Okay. Capitalism has become just like the dirtiest word in the world.
No question. Yeah. But I'm a black man, and I do work in the African American community. I do work in black communities all over the world.
And you're a success story.
And I'm going to continue to talk about capitalism. And the problem that we have is people want to talk, but they don't want to get their hands dirty.
Yeah.
And we need our African-American leaders, like myself, particularly our younger African-American leaders, to actually go into our school systems and do our jobs.
If you had to grade President Obama on the 8 years in terms of his support and help of the African-American community, what would that be?
African-American community, I give him a C-. I'll be honest with you.
Well, he
very
didn't focus on the economy. He focused on health care for the first 2 years. We know that. He wanted his legislation through instead of focusing on economic growth. And when you're not focused on economic growth, that trickles to everybody.
And
black, white,
Senator
everybody.
Schumer said focus on education, Mr. President. That's a bipartisan issue.
Exactly.
I agree.
Now, is this going to work? Because they're all putting money into sports. Hillary Clinton's campaign has announced that they're going to be putting a big ad on
NFL.
They're running spots.
Thanks, guys.
No, they're running spots on Sunday Night Football, and there's a 2-minute ad they're running on Monday night on all the major shows, on The Voice, Monday Night Football, and that Kevin James show. A 2-minute commercial.
But is that going to work?
I think you will hit some of your demographic, but the National Football League is filled with, that's middle America. And I think, at the end of the day, you are not going to see a surge in African-American voters. The surge is going to come from the Latin American voters. African-Americans, particularly underprivileged African-Americans, aren't going to the polls, and you can see it in the numbers, and you know why. And I think maybe she gets a little bit of spike from that, but I don't think it'll make a difference.
Who's going to win, Jack, before we go?
That's tough, man.
Come on, we got to get a prediction from you.
I think Hillary pulls it out, and I don't like to say that.
I thought you were talking about the game. You think Hillary pulls it out for the election?
I think
was
she
talking
pulls it
about
out.
Tonight's game and Monday Night Football.
Well, we can talk about that all day, Maria. The Giants better win.
Jack Brewer, thank you so much.
Thank you.
We'll be right back.